Good evening. You are listening to Inside the Continent on African Voices Radio and TV. I'm your host, Baillor Jalloh, and today we are discussing a critical issue, the rising anti-migrant sentiment in South Africa. I'm joined by Simba Chikanza, a Zimbabwean journalist and researcher based in the UK, and Ferdinand Ntani, a Tanzanian international criminal and human rights lawyer currently pursuing PhD studies in international law at the University of International Business and Economics in Beijing. With the help of these two gentlemen, we will discuss the roots and repercussions of these tensions within South Africa and the continent as a whole. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, VJ. Thank you for bringing us. I'm looking forward.
Ferdinand, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you very much.
Let's kick off straight away. Simba, if I may start with you. What will you say are the main drivers behind the recent anti-migrant demonstrations in South Africa? Are there any historical or socio-economic which has triggered these demonstrations?
You see, the demonstrations in South Africa, unbeknown to many, particularly South African citizens, are rooted in a failure of leadership in South Africa. Don't forget here, this country is over 500 years old. I'm talking about South Africa in its institutional borders that were set up by the white administration who conquered these black small countries around and put it all together, and it became a unitary state that combined a white community who were from the Dutch settlers and some who were coming from the English community, and them put together with the blacks. Now, this country has never had, at any time, before 1994, the end of apartheid, it's never had this sudden distrust, or sudden repulsion against other blacks. From time immemorial, I remember, look, if you go back into history, 1950s, 1960s, blacks from the north have always been coming down either into Rhodesia, which was Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, or South Africa itself, what it was, South Africa and Namibia. And why? Because this area was the booming center of economic development. So there were many jobs that were popping out, particularly in the mining area, manufacturing, and also a little bit of the farming, which was quite a lot back in those days. And there are so many Tanzanians, Malawians, Zambians, Zimbabweans who eventually became South African simply because of economic opportunities that they were looking for in South Africa from the 1960s and 1970s. And it was because of this also that every other country culturally viewed South Africa as their own responsibility to free it from apartheid. And so, however, as soon as the blacks get their liberation in 1994, they start to disintegrate.
Okay.
They remove themselves from the bigger Black African communities, that they were part of. Nigeria, for instance, which used to spend money. I mean, Nigeria used to pour money, millions, for the freedom of apartheid, of apartheid blacks, right, in South Africa and Zimbabwe. I can tell you, for instance, in Zimbabwe, the Herald newspaper was bought by the Nigerian government so that it could be used by the new the new black government soon after independence. We're talking about Nigeria here literally being an investor in the liberation of both Rhodesia and South Africa. And then all of a sudden, as soon as Nelson Mandela comes into power, we start to see a culture where the local blacks feel that their jobs are threatened, that their economic freedoms are threatened. Where did that come from? Now, I'll tell you quickly what I found out. It is the leadership of the ANC who became they became irresponsible. One of
It's
them.
very interesting that you are saying the leadership of the ANC is being very irresponsible, and also the historical context here that you've just cited, that many African nations, including Nigeria, helped South Africa to regain its independence or to free the black people in South Africa. But yet today, many local South Africans are seeing these African nations that are there, or the black Africans that are there, as the main cause. And they are not blaming their government, but they are blaming other African countries' government for not doing enough to keep their citizens in their country. And as you alluded there, that many of these other African nations are coming to South Africa to take their jobs, use their medical facilities and other like educational facilities as well.
I'll tell you what the ANC leadership are doing right now. This is what I'm about to declare right now has got paperwork, legal paperwork here. It has been thoroughly investigated by South African judges.
Okay.
We all know the aggressive role that the South African ANC leadership have played against Israel and America at the ICJ regarding human rights and genocide. Without saying too much, PJ, because I know this is going to blow a lot of people's minds, no one has ever really, I've noticed online, has ever really looked into it. I've noticed even the Israelis have never looked into this. Ramaphosa, for instance, who sends prosecutors to the ICJ to prosecute Benjamin Netanyahu over statements regarding human rights and genocide. Yonder, up there, 6,000 miles away. He is doing exactly the same thing, or helping to do the same thing, that he is prosecuting Netanyahu and the ICJ across the border in Zimbabwe, and he's helping someone who was installed by a white settler Rhodesia Special Branch unit to run Zimbabwe. I'm sorry I've dropped too much there. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but what I'm saying here, we're talking here, ANC leadership being totally and completely irresponsible and fueling tension, human rights abuses, including even genocide level, promoting genocide level. I will qualify that later. Genocide level human rights violations. Next to their border. And then guess what happens? Because there are potentially 5, if not 6 million Zimbabweans in South Africa, local South Africans start feeling threatened. And they start, you see, what I'm saying is these people, Zimbabweans, are fleeing the very human rights that are being promoted by the president of South Africa. And then,
let me take this opportunity to bring Ferdinand into this.
Absolutely.
Now,
I know I've jumped a bit. I wanted to say so much, but I'll start qualifying later on.
I'll give you time.
By
Ramaphosa,
Ramaphosa prosecuting Netanyahu over what he himself is helping Emmerson Mnangagwa do across the border. Please go ahead. Yeah,
that's a big allegation there, but I'll bring you back to it.
I will qualify. Thank you.
Let me take this opportunity, talking of human rights. Let me bring in now Ferdinand Ntani. So Ferdinand, you've just heard what Simba just alleged there about the human rights abuses happening in Zimbabwe. Now that this is happening in South Africa, in terms of currently what is happening in South Africa, the chasing of Black Africans across the country, asking them to leave the country and go back to their countries, how do these demonstrations align within South Africa's international human rights obligations?
Wow, thank you very much for a nice question. First of all, we should understand very clearly South Africa's obligation toward the protection of foreigners is not a matter of political discretion. It is an inherent and a legal mandate. South Africa is a member to multilateral human rights treaties. Well, I mean, also, it is a member of African Union plus all other human rights treaties at regional level. So in all means, human rights, I mean, South Africa has a legal obligations of ensuring adherence of all fundamental principles of human rights within domestic level. In all means, as same as applies in other jurisdictions. You know, the state is a principal actor of international law.
Okay.
But something to remember is the state does not guarantee, it's not a guarantor of human rights, because we are not getting the human rights from the state, but the state has the power to ensure the protection of it by enacting the sound laws to protect the interest, so that whatever infringements one may pursue the court, you know, for a legal limit. That is. I would like to
so in this right,
yes.
So in this right, is South Africa doing its obligations to protect citizens of other countries who are living in that country currently?
No. I wouldn't accept South Africa is doing enough. No, it is not doing enough in offering protection, because a mere political declaration that we condemn does not bring a lot, does not help a lot. You know, this has been occurred several times. We had xenophobia for the first time, and now it's happened repeatedly, and perhaps tomorrow and the day after will be happening the same. So we should see that the strong mechanism is done within South Africa to ensure that these Black people, not all Black people, foreigners in their territories are well protected. You know, we should see that people are able to confront the court. People are punished for whatever wrong that they're doing. This should be clearly seen. And that's why this is less an alarm at a global level. People are asking why this is happening. First time, second times, the same is happening. Mind you that by ratifying, I would like to mention at least three, which treaties which are regarded as a international bill of rights. Number one is Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. We have another International Convention on the Civil and Political Rights of 1966. Also, we have International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So these, when you take together as International Bill of Rights, the bundle of fundamental rights enshrined on it. For example, Article 2, Sub-Article 2 of International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights clearly stipulates that the states parties to the present covenant undertake to guarantee the rights, you know, and exercise those rights without discrimination of any kind.
Okay,
but race, color, sex, language.
If South Africa has not done enough or is not doing enough, what role should the African Union and SADC play here in addressing these tensions? We've seen countries like Nigeria calling on their citizens, if they want to be repatriated, they can repatriate them. And most recently, we've seen countries like Ghana, you know, asking, you know, for this to be discussed in the next African Union meeting. We've heard from Ethiopia, Lesotho, and other countries, you know. So, and South Africa is saying here, you know, on their defense that these xenophobic allegations, some of them are just allegations that, you know, they can defend themselves anywhere in the African continent.
You know, the bad thing about African Union, we have all institutions. We regard ourselves structurally as strong institutions. But, you know, I doubt one thing. When these institutions stand like bystanders, just watching what is going on and depart from its core objectives, you know, it's threatening. The AU and the SADC are currently acting as observers of the tragedy rather than the architects of a solution. So when individuals, countries like Ghana have to petition to AU to discuss safety of Africans in South Africa, it proves that our regional bodies are failing their primary mission to make borders a place of cooperation, not a frontier of fear. You know, things like making a mere statement, statement does not work a lot. We need the active mechanism to be in place, so to make sure this one can be wiped away. We can trace back the same from South Africa during apartheid. Majority of states around the globe, we are giving the voice, accusing the South Africa apartheid regime after what is going on. End of the day, they wiped away the regime and apartheid stopped. But I doubt, and I can dare to say that this kind of xenophobia, which is happening today in South Africa, is like a new form of apartheid. I can say so.
Right. Yeah, Simba, if I may bring you back again, you've just listened to what Ferdinand Ntani saying there, that the South African government is failing in terms of protecting other migrants in the country, i.e. Black Africans from other parts of the continent. Now, listening to both of you, and also from the historical context, you started how South Africa was built and how many countries participated in helping South Africa become what it is today. In your opinion, you know, they are saying they're asking foreigners out, but from what we've seen, most of the foreigners that they are targeting or that they're asking out are Black Africans. In your opinion, why are only Black Africans targeted, not other colors, i.e. white foreigners and Indian foreigners, for instance?
You know, if you are to be as pragmatic as you can, this matter goes beyond skin color.
Okay.
I think there's a recording that is interfering somewhere. I think there's a recording that's interfering somewhere. Maybe if it can be muted. So I was saying, the problem here, it goes beyond the simplistics of someone's skin color. Discontentment regarding foreigners.
Okay.
They are generally, that phenomenon is generally recurrent in almost all countries around the world. A lot of the times, locals feel when they find there are people roaming around who don't speak the language and who are now part of their society, they would just naturally tend to feel threatened. And if we look at it all over Africa, even right now, I think the difference with South Africa is the magnitude of the discontentment.
Okay.
Why does it happen in South Africa? It is because in South Africa there's perhaps a higher density. There's a larger proportion of foreigners who speak different languages, different cultures, who are now part of society. And before they were not there. That's number one. Number two, the aspect which I've noticed, I think you've noticed, BJ, people many times complain, is crime. They ascribe a lot of the crimes that are happening to foreigners. They accuse foreigners of being the ones who are bringing the weapons, drugs into the areas. And so
Right.
that complexity, you can't ignore it. You can't just take that and just say, well, it is happening, it shouldn't happen, and you would directly blame that on an individual, particularly maybe a politician. I think things need to be judged within their context. Now, there is the last part here, which is the jobs. This is where people then say, look, they're taking our jobs. They're taking our jobs. That phenomenon there, it is there. Why do South Africans feel threatened? It is because a foreigner who's just crossed over the border into South Africa and is intending to go 2 months later. They've come on a visitor's visa. They will work for peanuts. They will not want to sign a contract. They just want to work and go away. And the greater the number of such, because businesses want, if you're running a business, who wouldn't want cheap labor? So when that happens now, the locals feel threatened. I've met physically myself a lot of South Africans. I remember meeting an immigration, someone who was in ORT Airport, OR Tambo Airport, who told me, I mean, she was really distraught. She felt things have gone down, the economy has gone down, everything has gone down. And generally, foreigners will be blamed. And let's not forget here that the general idea of blaming someone else, it's inherent in human nature. Humans will generally want to blame someone else for their problems. But it gets worse now when the numbers are multiplying. What I would like to just deal with right now is what I have noticed that could be fixed by the leadership practically. I spent, BJ, several years from 2018 chasing President Cyril Ramaphosa, the president. 2019, I went to Switzerland, to Davos. I spent days in Davos, if not 2 weeks there, just wanting to confront him over statements, just mere statements, by the way, that he was making, that if they could be addressed and he could say the right thing, we could easily have 500,000 Zimbabweans from my country relocate to their home country. And these are just statements.
So are you saying the South African government or Ramaphosa is partly blamed for foreigners or Zimbabweans, to be specific, coming to South Africa illegally or living in South Africa?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just Zimbabwe. South African foreign policy has destroyed the well-being of Africans beyond the Limpopo. And we're dealing with here South African politicians making certain moves that cause Black Africans to want to relocate to South Africa because they can't live in their own country. And you can only blame that on one person. The South African judges since 2002 have blamed this migration on the South African presidents, every one of them, one by one. We're talking here investigations, reports, verdicts, 2014, 2016, Justice C.C. Kampempe, judgment ordering the South Africa Prosecution Service to prosecute people who are committing human rights and crossing over. And they've never done, there's not even any single person who's ever been prosecuted. What you've actually seen has been and continues to be President Cyril Ramaphosa repeating.
That is a huge allegation, isn't it?
This is a public record. If you check the Justice Sisi Kompempe report of 2002 over human rights abuses that displaced millions since 2002, particularly Zimbabweans. That report was kept under lock and key by the South African
But don't you
president.
also think South Africa is also obliged as a country, people who leave their own countries coming to South Africa, as in those that you are alleging are living in South Africa that are meant to be tried? You know, they have the obligatory, as a country, we've got an international lawyer here, by the way, who will correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
to give them asylum if they need to. And most of these people that you are alleging that are in that country, you know, probably they are seeking asylum and they are kind of like running from their countries. They think they are in danger and they are
No,
seeking safety.
no, it's not just about asylum here. We're talking about prosecution. The South Africa is signatory to several international. I'm sure that our lawyer here can explain a few things to me about that. But I'm talking about the judgments that I know, particularly we're talking about case law now. South Africa, the South Africa Police and Prosecution Service were ordered by judges in 2016 to prosecute human rights abuses that are displacing millions of Zimbabweans into South Africa. And the verdict states that the people who are perpetrating these abuses, as soon as they cross over into South Africa for anything, whether shopping or business, they must be prosecuted the same way they could be prosecuted at the ICJ or at The Hague. They must be prosecuted under international law, and this domesticated South African law. There's not a single violator of human rights abuse 10 years later this is SAPS, who have received multiple such have ever done. And we could talk about even the latest developments where the South African president is seen a few days ago flying
We
into
will come to that. You will have
yeah,
time to talk
absolutely.
about
We're
that.
talking here. You see, you see these type of acts and statements. Benjamin Netanyahu is a saint compared to Emerson Mnangagwa, and yet President Cyril Ramaphosa flies and has private meetings without his entourage, his official entourage, and promotes such a person who is making statements to annihilate a large portion of the population of Zimbabwe for political and ideological reasons.
But traveling to Zimbabwe does not mean he agrees to what Mnangagwa might have said, or
Yeah, you can say traveling, but we're talking about here him actually stating it, promoting it. When he
From
was
his
in
defense
Davos,
there, I'm trying to say probably he traveled there to discuss how Zimbabwe could
well,
repatriate
you know
its
what?
citizens.
In 2019 at Zurich, on 22 January 2019 to be specific, I was there at Zurich. Cyril Ramaphosa himself announced with his own mouth that no violation has happened in Zimbabwe at all. At all. With his own mouth.
Let's
He
hear.
said,
Let's
he
hear from
said,
Ferdinand.
he said Zimbabwe, he said Zimbabwe has done it's run all its elections well when guess what, BJ? Soldiers, uniformed soldiers, wielding guns, shooting, have been seen on video in broad daylight at 11 a.m. shooting unarmed. We're talking here, old mothers who are in the street just passing by during election time just to change election results. A statement like this is announced on national television ZBC that we are deploying soldiers to change election results. And then Cyril Ramaphosa goes to Zurich and he lies that such an incident never happened, something that was declared on ZBC, something that actually happened here. Live ammunition being used on unarmed civilians, 6 people being killed, more than 50 women being raped, and elections being changed. And then you have
Right.
the South African president using his authority that he is paid. He is under the payroll of the taxpayer. You see, the South African taxpayers who are the employers of Cyril Ramaphosa should simply confront their employee.
Well, that's the
Because he
statement.
is the one,
That's
he is
what.
the one, he is the one, he is the one. And you know what? I could leave Zimbabwe. I could go to another country. I could check DRC. I could check all these other African countries. And if you check in every one of these countries, I'm sure our lawyer can explain to me, South African foreign policy is the reason why Africans are in South Africa right now, because their country is not livable. Their home country is no longer their home. And it is all because of the South African president and all the other presidents since 2002. What I'm saying right now is not my opinion. It has been investigated by judges. In 2002, three South African senior judges traveled to Zimbabwe. They investigated these violations. They completed a report. In 2014, a verdict was passed in South Africa, and ordering that report must be made public because the South African presidents were hiding it from disclosure. In 2016, another verdict. So what I'm just trying to say here, everything that is happening that is wrong with the migration of Africans here is because the South African presidents, all of them from 2002, have been forcing
So you are
Africans out of
saying.
their home nations, making their own home countries not livable and uninhabitable. And then after that, what happens? When people have relocated to South Africa, now they're being told, go back where? You see, where do I go back? Which country do I go
Right.
back to? And you know what, BJ? I myself have filmed Zimbabweans into buses. I've helped Zimbabweans, like literally saying, we're going back home, we're going back home, we are fleeing xenophobia. And you know what, BJ? A whole GoFundMe money is put together to help Zimbabweans to relocate to Zimbabwe. I've got this on live video, right? Guess what? In less than 2 weeks, I get phone calls. I've jumped the border again. I've gone back. I don't care if I die in South Africa. Do you know why? The country is not livable. Zimbabwe is not livable. And I'm sure every other African country up there in the north, people are finding it difficult. And what I found, what is there on paper, it is because of the South African presidents who are solely and singularly, and they've been caught out by the
Your
very
opinion there
judges
is
of
crystal
South
clear.
Africa. Thank you.
Your opinion, Simba, is crystal clear there. So, Ferdinand, what's your take on what you've just heard from what Simba has said here? Looking at the broader context here, he's saying, in terms of what is happening in South Africa, it's not only because of Africans going there to look for jobs, but because of South Africa's foreign policy dating back in the last 30 years since the ANC government came into power, that the ANC government has been kind of like supporting other African governments, dictatorial government in some parts of Africa. You know, that's the reason why many migrants are coming to South Africa. As an international lawyer or a human rights lawyer, what's your take on that? And do you share the same impact or the same blame here?
Arguing it legally about the status of immigrants in South Africa first. We should understand very clearly who is a migrant. And of course, it can easily be understood someone who has moved from one place just for a shelter into another place. It can be like that, simply. But giving them the status of being the refugees, it is it's an extra step. And we cannot put our own ways to define who is a refugee to that extent, but the law has stipulated clearly who is a refugee and which rights a refugee enjoys being in another territory.
Yeah. So can I ask you there? Are you saying
Okay.
many of the people that are in South Africa, they are refugees instead of migrants?
No. I cannot say so. Because for one being a refugee, one fundamental reason is fleeing his territory for the fear of persecution, fear of death. So,
which is what Simba is claiming. Many Zimbabweans are leaving Zimbabwe to go to South Africa because they fear for their life in Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is not livable.
Okay, we have to cross-check which circumstances are pulling them out of Zimbabwe to South Africa. Is someone threatening killing them, or they are fleeing that country because of maybe hard living conditions, poverty, for example? That cannot be a factor for someone being granted the status of being a refugee. That is not. Because when you define refugees as per 1969 Convention on the status of refugees in Africa, it speaks the same as 1951 Convention of Refugees internationally, that someone who is fleeing the country, when he is fleeing, the receiving country has to give him or her, the place to live without returning back. Because when you return back, you are bringing a person to the place where he freed that fear. That's why it is. But after the arrival in another country, that specific country, that person has to be protected, has to be identified, and a special place should be allocated for him or her to live. That is what the international defines the refugee status. But the factor, what reasons has forced you to leave your country, is very paramount for you to define. So, considering the situation in South Africa,
looking at the law, we have the African Union, we have the SADC region as well, which gives freedom of movement within the SADC region, not the whole of African Union, but within the SADC region. There is that freedom of movement, I guess, because we've got similar scenario or similar situations in West Africa, where we have the ECOWAS region, where you have freedom of movement, freedom of business, and freedom of employment. Is that the case for South Africa? And if it is, why are migrants from neighboring countries being attacked and being chased to go back to their country?
One thing I can say about freedom of movement within the ambit of law. You are free to move from country A to another, but subject to the well-established law. For example, I am free now to visit Zimbabwe, to visit South Africa or any other country, but subject to laws which will allow me to legally be into that country. The exception is I'm leaving because of pressure, which is threatening me to leave my country into another. And this one will be also an exception when I'm getting into that country. But the situation, as Mr. Simba has tried to explain, that there is the influx of Zimbabweans in South Africa. And according to the report that he has started to refer to, meaning that if the judiciary has been able to define, to interpret the law, the enforceability of it is vested on the shoulders of executive, now the government, because the government works under 3 pillars. That is the state, how states works. The parliament or legislature has to enact the laws. Then the laws enacted by the parliament will be interpreted by the judiciary. Meaning, if something is wrong, or this act or conduct is amount to the infringement of human rights, it is the court which defines that there is infringement, and aggrieved person has to be to receive the remedy. Even so, they want to implement that decision of the judiciary.
Okay.
It's the government, executive
Let
arm.
me bring you back into this again. Simba mentioned earlier that just recently Ramaphosa traveled to Zimbabwe, on official visit to Zimbabwe. And we all know that Zimbabwe currently, they are in the process of wanting to change their constitution that change the 2-term limit to 3 terms. Currently that is under the process. The government is in favor of it and the opposition are not. They are saying it is a way of paving the way for Mnangagwa to extend his term or to stay in power. Looking at those tensions that are there in Zimbabwe right now, is it the right time for Ramaphosa to travel to Zimbabwe? And it is an unofficial visit. And given that they are neighboring countries and Zimbabwe has got one of the highest migrants in South Africa, is that, like, as Simba alluded, is that a way of giving Mnangagwa a green light to say, do what you want to do? And from the international law, I'm just wanting to know what's your take on that, and then I'll come back to Simba to see what he has to say in terms of that visit. And according to him, the unofficial visit is a way of giving Mnangagwa a green light.
Actually, from the diplomatic point of view, the president visit in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the visit in Zimbabwe, they are aggressively pushing.
Well, he's under scrutiny right now. Even the opposition or his allied members in parliament are asking him, why did he travel to Zimbabwe without letting them know?
Anyway, states has bilateral agreements. There's also multilateral, which does not restrict them from moving from one country to another, one president and the official capacity into another state. It can be done like that. But politically, things have to be well defined. You should do things timely. The tension is high. First, the ongoing situation in South Africa. And the second, the other side, the next door, you see how the Zimbabwe political, infrastructure and how things are going are rising out. So it is like the matter of calculation. Going into Zimbabwe by the time is like to fuel the discussion. But, it's like you are trying to ordain the process, when two state leaders are meeting together, they're trying to, to harmonize that we are in diplomatic in terms, we are each other doing well. So this is like to ordain the process. I can say by my own opinion, because this process by what is going on now in Zimbabwe, pushing the Constitution Amendment Bill number 3, which I know, which seeks to extend the presidential tenure for the President Emmerson Mnangagwa, among other things. It is shaking, and it's like a silent endorsement of democratic backslide. I can argue in that point of view.
And to be fair with Zimbabwe, let's be fair to Mnangagwa. It's not only in Zimbabwe, it's happening across Africa right now. We've just had yesterday or recently the president of DRC also, saying if the people are happy for him to continue, he's happy to continue. And we've seen others in West Africa as well. But let's bring back Simba in again. Simba, with regards
before Simba is chipping in, excuse me, please.
Regards to Ramaphosa going to Harare or visiting Harare, you stated that's like a green light to Mnangagwa to do what he wants. And we've seen the South Africans as well saying, look, South Africa should be for South Africans, other migrants or other African countries, people should both go back to their country and face their government, try to fix their own problems. So here, my question to you is, if South Africans can fix their problem or have fixed their problems, why shouldn't Zimbabweans as well face their problems and fix their own problems, or the other African countries in general?
Okay, so I have to quickly state here something that people may not be aware of. Zimbabwe historically was set up by South Africans. Okay. Historically, the borders of this country, what it is today, it was set up by people who came from South Africa. And they are the ones who marked the border to what it is right now.
You mean the colonizers?
Yes, they were South Africans. They were coming from South Africa. That's my point. So if you're going to understand today, understand back then in the 1800s. So the two countries are inseparable at that. One thing happens over there, it will affect the other, and vice versa. And at one time, they were almost like one and the same. I mean, for instance, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, right, were one country. Namibia and South Africa were one country as well at one time. You see, you're talking about all this being a unitary. And so you need to see that when Ramaphosa does what he does, he may not necessarily be out of line in terms of responsibility, even though he will be asked to account for why he is doing what he is doing. Now, traveling on a private visit without your official entourage, and you are the president of South Africa, you are going to meet not any minister, not anyone who is in the official structures of the government of Zimbabwe, except Mnangagwa, the president, and two people who are persons of interest under international law. Kudakwashi Tagwirei, Wikneo Chivayo, whose brother is a fugitive from justice right now over a gold smuggling offense. He himself, Wikneo Chivayo, has got a case, not one case, multiple cases, one relating to 100 million that was transferred into a South African bank account, and it was money for the elections. Other cases, new cases at present, and these are high-profile cases. And you are the president. You are seen walking hand in glove.
And these are cases that are in court right now?
Yes, right now. And then the other one is investigated, is an investigation. It was listed by the intelligence unit. We're talking about this high-level unit that investigates money laundering, the type of crimes that if that person is seen with a head of state, the institutions of the country would not just be intimidated, they would be immobilized. And so when that happens, and then the president is also someone who's got a background here, he himself, of suspicious money, and many other inquiries that have had to be done, that have had to be asked and looked into in South Africa. Then there are serious matters here relating to potential abuse by the executive, and these are the things that, or the level of alleged misconduct. That, for instance, Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, I will repeat those two on another level. This is now a different matter.
To Benjamin Netanyahu.
I'm coming back to it. Remember, Benjamin Netanyahu is a parallel here. We have to compare. We can't. He's now a comparator. Donald Trump is now a comparator because Ramaphosa elevated himself to the position of a prefect of the world okay, regarding human rights, regarding executive executive, the use of, of executive power. And so, why shouldn't we? We have to. And you know that right now, as we speak, King Charles had to fly to America and to spend time there and talk to Trump because of matters relating to abuse of power. Okay, potential of our alleged abuse of executive power.
Let's keep it allegedly.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, what is Cyril Ramaphosa doing? What is the prefect, the man who took Netanyahu and the Israeli government to the ICJ, the man who almost always wants to come out there and you know and he has got a position of leadership on the continent.
But
What
let's be
is he
honest here,
doing?
Simba. You
But
cannot compare. You cannot compare Israel or Netanyahu or what is happening between Israel and Palestine, which I believe that's where you're drawing your parallel from.
Yes.
To what is happening in Zimbabwe. At least Zimbabwe is a state.
Excuse me.
Has got
BJ.
has got people, has got the military, whereas Palestine has got no military, no institutions, you know. So you cannot, those are two things. What you are comparing here, this is something that the whole world, the whole international world recognizes.
BJ,
what Israel has done in
BJ,
Palestine,
the people, I'll tell you right now,
against
the
humanity.
people of Palestine,
I don't think that is the case in
the
Zimbabwe
people
right
of
now.
Palestine,
I'm not trying in any case to defend Mnangagwa
the
here.
people of Palestine, the people of Gaza have not seen the level of abuse. They've not experienced the level of abuse Zimbabweans have under Mnangagwa. Let me tell you quickly. Yes, let me tell you with facts here. The people of Gaza have never seen pregnant. Yes, of course, I'm not saying they've not seen bombings and children being killed, but hear me, they've never seen, let's be frank here, pregnant women being bayoneted by soldiers. No, hold on here, hold on. They've never seen Netanyahu announcing that the people of Gaza are being are being dealt with like cockroaches. The term cockroaches has never been used on the people of Gaza or Palestine or Lebanon or any of these. Let me finish. These statements that I'm giving you verbatim here have been made and they've been practiced by Mnangagwa on a large proportion of the population of Zimbabwe in the south who are historically South Africans. These are the Matebele people. Okay? Over 30,000 estimated have been killed since 1980. But quickly, in this very same period of Ramaphosa's presidency, let me tell you, people have been killed while Mnangagwa, worse than Netanyahu, Mnangagwa is announcing. Let me finish. No. Let me finish this one. Mnangagwa is announcing that people are going to be killed. Guess for what reason? Not because they threaten anyone. Not because they threaten, like in this case. Netanyahu could say, oh, you people of Palestine or you people of Gaza, you are threatening us or you want to do this. No. Do you know what he actually says? He says, we are going to kill all of you. We're going to send soldiers on you because you are guilty of stopping the rain. 2 February, let me finish. 2 February 2020, during Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency. Soon after he made that statement, around the time that he made that statement in Switzerland, Mnangagwa was announcing to the people of Nelson Chamisa's party in Kwazana that they're going to have soldiers offloaded on them and annihilated simply because they are guilty of stopping the rain. A whole president made this announcement. And guess what happened around that time? Women were raped. People were killed. They disappeared. Men were raped. Mothers were raped while they while their kids. Let me finish. While their kids were watching. You know what? I talked to some of these women. Right now, they're still in hiding today, 6 years later. And so, when President Ramaphosa goes and meets such a person, are you telling me that you can put Netanyahu and Mnangagwa and say Mnangagwa is better than Netanyahu? Come on.
I'm not
You know what?
anyhow.
Let me hear. We're
Saying
talking here.
Mnangagwa is better than Netanyahu,
Yeah,
or Netanyahu better
but
than
yeah, but here
Mnangagwa.
but what happened a few days ago was
Mhm.
the president of South Africa using his executive powers, okay,
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
go and secretly meet Emmerson Mnangagwa, endorse him, and strengthen his stranglehold on power. These killings of tens of thousands of black Africans who are also South African,
Allegedly.
by the way. Let me finish. These are also South African, by the way. Let's not forget. They are historically South African, right? Who are being killed by the same Mnangagwa.
Simba,
I mean, come on. Isn't that a paradox?
Simba, sorry to interrupt you there. Now
Yeah.
let's go back to South Africa. I know we are still within context
Go
here,
ahead.
but let's forget about the politics. Economically, can South Africa survive without migrants in the country in terms of its economy? The reason why I'm asking that, you mentioned earlier that most of these jobs, or many of these jobs that migrants do in the country, these are jobs that many South Africans cannot do or don't want to do. So looking at that, economically, can South Africa survive? Ferdinand, are you there? Can South Africa survive economically without its neighbors, countries like Zimbabwe, Malawi, Tanzania, Nigeria, Ghana, you name it?
Okay. Can I speak? Yeah, it is. No, the countries are depending each other. Economically, this is how we do operate. One country and other country are using to live, when living in harmony, are depending to each other. You can find, for example, in Tanzania, you may find people from DR Congo are working there. But the question is, under what basis are you working? This should be very clear. Are you working as an investor? What are you doing? What law guides you on your working? So you enjoy the bundle of rights depending to the activity that you are doing within the country. That's number one, very important.
I think that's a good point there, because many of these demonstrations that I've seen, some of the videos, the demonstrators are saying they are after migrants that are living in the country illegally. So we must also state that clearly. And no country can accept for people to be in their country illegally, is it?
Another further question one we would ask is that if you are in the country illegally, who allows you to operate? Who gives you the license to do business? These are similar questions, should go together. Because if you are in the country legally, meaning you have to follow all proper procedure for you to work. You have to pay tax. You must have the license. Okay. And among other things, you should be aware of your rights protected. Once your right is infringed, you should go before the court of law and enforce your right. It's like two parties have entered into illegal contract, and the one has breached it. Where will you go to enforce that contract? You cannot go anywhere to enforce. So if you are illegal, working illegally, meaning that even your rights have been breached, you can go nowhere to enforce that right. And if you are working, you have license and any other things, in my understanding, impliedly you have been recognized as your presence is illegally identified. That's what one should draw the conclusion from within.
Okay. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Simba, just a final word from you. That is the way these demonstrations have been reported in terms of the media. We all work in the media. We've got under 1 minute to go, by the way. So how do you think the South African media has portrayed these demonstrations, and and also the African Union in general, or the continent in general? How has these demonstrations been perceived across Zimbabwe and other parts of Africa?
Well, the demonstrations that have been done here by supposedly jobless South Africans who are demanding a return of foreigners to their countries and the like. They've really outraged the rest of Africa. And what I want to say quickly, maybe as we are ending, is that what people who I have been speaking with would like to see is something discussed that can address the problem. And this is what I am seriously concerned here. How can it be stopped? Because it's not the first time. These demonstrations have been there since 2006. I think if I remember well, 2006, 2007. How can they be stopped? And how can Ramaphosa and all these other Mnangagwa agents, like what happened there, home meeting of the President of South Africa meeting two persons of interest, and also this being announced by another person of interest who claimed that he was exposing it, was claiming that he's breaking the news. Someone who is encouraging a lot of crimes in Zimbabwe, called Hopo Chingono, and so when Africans fail to understand how they can how can they stop it? How can they stop that problem from recurring? That problem will keep coming. And I think these conversations need now to graduate to that level, BJ, where we then start looking at these operators. Ramaphosa is definitely an operator for Mnangagwa. Well, he is proven to be, right? Wigno Chivayo, Kudakwa Shetagwire, and I will say this one here, which I can qualify later on, the one that I've just mentioned, who was claiming that he's announcing it.
You've got less than 30 seconds to go.
Absolutely, yeah. And when in actual fact, what Ramaphosa was doing there in that meeting is what he himself has been doing for Mnangagwa, attending secret meetings since the crackdowns of 2018 and helping Mnangagwa, and then now popping out announcing as if he's breaking news, when in actual fact he's also part of that very same corruption with Mnangagwa, with Ramaphosa. So these are the characters that Africans now need to study. Know these people who are appearing as if they are either in executive power, they're in journalism profession and power, when in actual fact they're operators for these violators of human rights, and also violators of the laws of the countries. I'm done.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but a big thank you to both of you for your insight. It is crucial we continue these conversations to foster understanding and unity across Africa. Until next time, I'm Baillor Jalloh. Stay informed and be inspired. Thank you.
Thank you, BJ.
Thank
Cheers.
you.